Ladies and gentlemen, we are live and direct with the BF squad. I may not have to do many introductions here because a lot of you guys are starting to get familiar with a lot of these cute little faces that we see surrounded here. So I'm going to start with my guy here, Mitch Brother. Mitch, let them know how you're contributing to the Buffalo Fanatics, and then we'll make the round room, and then we'll get right into free agency talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been writing on the BF website now for like 2 years. I've been doing all the stadium articles recently and working on a Tyler Matakevich article. Pierre, great job on that interview, so that'll be dropping soon. Keep an eye out for that. And then I also am a co-host on the 585 Report with Ryan Sullivan. So, yeah, that's what I do here at BF.
Yes, sir. We're going to move over to Mr. Handsome in the corner over here. Oh, yeah. All the way to the other side. Yeah,
we got a bunch of handsomes in the corner, man.
Yeah, there's multiple handsomes in multiple corners. But my name is Judge Mathis. You can find me every Monday and Thursday night with my co-host, who is better looking than me, Dave Tilton, on the Air Raid Hour every Monday and Thursday, 8 p.m. We will be live with the first day of free agency tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Let's Nap with no hat. What?
No hat today. Yeah. Switching it up a little bit.
What's going on, Nap? Talk to us, man.
You can find me on the Nat and Mo's Buffalo podcast every Friday with my newly added co-host Casey Reed, and we're just kind of chopping it up every single week. And we got some good things coming after free agency. We got some nice guests coming on for some draft talk.
Nicely done, Zach Vaughn. I don't know if Zach can hear us. Zach, you can hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
There you go. What's the word, Zach? Talk to us. How are you contributing to the BF squad, man? What are we looking forward to coming up soon?
Well, every week on Monday mornings, Eric Schmidt and I drop the draft spy articles about offensive prospects we'd like to see the Bills consider. At this point, since the Bills have actually visited with guys, we are now going based off that list. So we have a pretty hot one coming out tomorrow morning. And then occasionally I will be coming out with backseat GM editorials every couple of weeks. My last one is one that I know has been getting a little bit of discussion around the Bills social media. That was last week. We'll probably discuss it a little bit on this one, but beyond that, it's just more of odds and ends, some things that come up every now and again, like these shows.
There we have it. And last but not least, our film buff, Mr. Clay Troya.
How's it going, Rico? Thanks for having me on, man. This offseason I'm just going to be doing a little bit more film stuff. Just posted one on Matt Milano. Should have one on Darrell Williams coming out soon. Just going to look at some prospects, some free agents. Just take a little bit, short film, take a look at a couple plays and see what guys are offering on the film.
I like it. I like it a lot. So I'm gonna jump into it right off the bat. I think we've all on our own our own shows or articles have touched on this, but let's touch on it and then move on from it. So Beane has made some nice moves. He's made some, I don't want to say questionable moves, but to some, they might question the moves he's made. One in particular being John Brown. So John Brown has been released. Quentin Jefferson has been released. We've re-signed some big names, Darrell Williams. We've re-signed Matt Milano. So let's get into the hot topic right now, because I think some people are still unsure of what the offense will look like without John Brown. So I'm going to start with Clay. Clay, was it warranted for John Brown to be let go, or were you of the mindset that, man, we could have kept him? We could have cut him, brought him back, do something, but we shouldn't have let him go the way we did. What are your thoughts on that?
I think honestly it was the right move. It was a business decision. We love John Brown, and he was kind of the jumping point for Josh Allen. He was, John Brown walked so that Stephon Diggs could run basically with Josh Allen. So, we love John Brown, but it was really the right move as far as business goes. The amount of cap that he was taking up, he's going to be on the wrong side of 30, next month, I think it is. And it financially, it just didn't make sense to keep him around, especially when you have the emergence of a guy like Gabe Davis. And really, we kind of saw what that offense looks like without John Brown. When he was injured, Gabe Davis was able to step up.
So, Nap, are you in agreement with that, or do you feel like, man, John Brown was a piece that we shouldn't have let go? We should have kept him. Are you in that mindset? Or are you like, yo, man, good riddance?
I mean, it would have been cool if we could have kept him, but this is a different offseason than any other year. So it's not like we can treat it like the previous offseason. So when you have a guy who has that much money that you could save when you saw the team produce without him, it makes sense to let him go. I mean, it sucks because I know he's not homegrown talent, but he kind of feels like he's homegrown talent because of the time that he's had with Buffalo the last 2 years. But I think the more questionable decision in this sense would be, we won't know until after the draft. Do they find somebody to try and replace him? I would question this decision more if they don't try and bring at least somebody in. If they just try and run it back with everybody except for John Brown, that would be more questionable than just moving on from John Brown, in my opinion.
Do you feel the same way, Judge?
Yeah, like I said, in any other offseason, John Brown is probably still a Buffalo Bill, because you got to figure the cap is $30 million lower than they were expecting it to be. But in the same sense, you know, Matt Milano is probably still a Buffalo Bill because of the situation we found ourselves in. The market probably wasn't what Matt Milano was expecting. So there are some goods to this type of offseason, and there are some bad things, some negative things to this type of offseason. The good thing about losing John Brown is, number one, you know, Gabriel Davis, I think, is ready to step up into a more prominent role in the offense. He was more effective on the inside, though, last year as sort of a big slot tight end type of guy. And when John Brown was out of the lineup, his numbers weren't exactly the prettiest when he was playing the boundary. That's not to say Gabriel Davis can't develop into that player over an off season with more repetitions and, you know, working one-on-one with a guy like Stephon Diggs and our wide receiver coach, Chad Hall, excuse me.
Yep.
But that does leave a glaring hole in a field stretcher. The Buffalo Bills need to go out and find a boundary receiver who can stretch the field. Lucky for them, there are a ton of them this offseason. You could probably get one for a bargain. A guy like Kenny Stills, you could probably get for $1 or $2 million. So the Buffalo Bills made the right move because tough decisions had to be made. And with the emergence of Gabriel Davis, a guy like John Brown was more expendable than others.
Mitch, I got to ask you this question, though. So, in the midst of high emotion, if you will, our guy John Brown, our former receiver John Brown, was on satellite radio talking to Solomon Wilcox, and he made some comments that kind of made its way around social media, and some people took it one way, some people took it another. He made a claim that he wasn't contacted to be spoken to about, here's what we're going to do. He just found the news out to be just like that. So my question to you is, were his comments warranted, or did you feel he was completely out of pocket to make that type of comment, meaning Josh Allen, maybe he had a say in this whole situation, or they should have called me? How do you feel on that situation with the way he handled that in the media?
I mean, listen, I'm sure he's upset because, no one wants to get caught no matter who you are. But I think that John Brown, if he didn't think that there was a chance this could happen, especially with this offseason, all the players had to be aware that the cap was going to be low. Teams are going to have to make some tough decisions. So part of me believes, he's he's emotionally upset. It's okay. He's on a good team. He was in a role. Now he's a free agent. But at the same time, I can't not imagine that he thought there was no way this could possibly happen and that he was going to be a Bill for sure. So I guess I'm kind of, in the middle on this, where he should have been prepared for it, but at the same time, it's understandable that he's a little upset.
1,000%. And I think we all have our opinions on how it could have been handled or how it was handled. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and you got to kind of prepare for those things, knowing how long you've signed with a team, 2, 3 year, 4 year deal, and knowing what's going on around the league. You see it. People are getting cut that you would never normally see a free agent. So we're going to stay on this topic a little bit because we've made some other cuts, and they've affected the way we're going to roll out our roster for this year, looking at the receiver room. And we're going to stay on the receiver room right now. So currently right now in the receiver room, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis, Gentry, Tanner Gentry, Isaiah Hodgins, and I think I'm missing one more. Duke Williams. And Kumro. Duke Williams and Kumro. That's our receiver room as of right now. We still have a potential to get back Isaiah Mckenzie. Are you guys in the camp of bringing back Isaiah Mckenzie, or do we just start fresh and go into free agency and draft and bring that speedster guy? I'll start with Zach on the bottom here.
I would approach this by saying, first of all, I am a big Isaiah Mckenzie fan. I've been a big fan of his entire time in Buffalo. So, yes, I would love to see him back. However, I will say this, I understand if they decide to go into a different direction. Like, if you did want to put the money towards a Curtis Samuel, who's a better route runner than Mckenzie, who brings that extra versatility, being able to line up in the backfield, I can understand that. I'm not saying that I expect Curtis Samuel, but I could understand that. Isaiah Mckenzie is that speed guy. We need speed. Like everyone we just mentioned, none of them have speed outside of Mckenzie. He was that guy. We need more speed receivers. But I would also say, too, that there is plenty of affordable speed receiver, return man, capable prospects in this year's draft. So as much as I want to say 100%, yes, bring Isaiah Mckenzie back. We need him back. I would also be okay if they decided to let him walk and get his money somewhere else and then draft like a Daz Newsome or a Jalen Darden in the 5th round.
Now, Nap, are you a fan of us having a void at the return position? Because that's where Andre Roberts filled that role. So Andre Roberts is gone. Isaiah Mckenzie, we don't know what's going on with that. So we don't have a filler at the return position, and that leaves a void at the receiver position. Is there someone in free agency that you see that could fill both those roles as a return guy and a guy that actually can contribute on the offensive side of the ball?
Yes, but he's going to be the most expensive guy that I think the Bills would consider, because I look at Curtis Samuel as that guy who could do that. He hasn't been a return man as of late, but his first 2 years in the league, he was doing kick returns off and on for the Panthers. So he has that ability to do that. He has that Swiss Army knife capability that Isaiah Mckenzie brings to the team, as well as just being a good all-around wide receiver who, in a better offense than he was in Carolina with better players, his potential could be unlocked a little bit more. Now, the question with him is, like, how could you free up the cap space to sign him and then also make the other moves? So I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it's going to go. They have to bring back either Roberts or Mckenzie, just for the sheer point of, like, you have to have a return man. And whoever they don't bring back, if they don't bring back Mckenzie, then they probably go that Swiss Army knife player in as a value guy in free agency or the draft. And if they don't bring back Roberts, then they probably go for somebody who could be more of like just a straight up outside wide receiver. So I think, I don't know, I would love to see Curtis Samuel, but I just don't know how they can make that happen and make the other necessary moves, which is, I mean, it's a frustrating part of the offseason right now.
And I want Clay to jump on this and then Steve right after. Are we okay to just stick with the receiving core that we have right now?
I don't think we're okay with it right now. We definitely need to add something or someone to the element. I think a speed guy is definitely something that needs to come in. John Brown was a speedy guy. Isaiah Mckenzie was a speedy guy. And in this kind of offensive system that Dable likes to run, having a Swiss Army knife that you can use in a little bit of every situation is something that's a huge asset to the offense. And, you know, Curtis Samuel, I also am a huge Curtis Samuel fan. The more I watch his tape, the more I like from what I see from him, because he can line up in the backfield. He can receive handoffs. He can do read option as a running back. He can do the jet sweep, and, you know, like Knapp said, he can return as well. So having him on the team would be a huge asset, and he'd be able to fill a lot of roles, but he would take up a lot of the cap space, and I just don't know if that's a viable option for this season at least. But, you know, I think they do need someone that's a little speedier. I can't see them bringing back Andre Roberts just because I think in a situation like this with the type of cap space, it's hard to justify spending the money on just a return specialist. Mm-hmm. When, you know, he's not really a guy that's going to be out there as a receiver that much, or, you know, doing those gadget plays that Isaiah Mckenzie is able to do. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fundamentally disagree. I think Andre Roberts is the most important free agent we have left.
Here we go now. I'm going to give you full screen.
Just because he wasn't given an opportunity to do the jet sweep gadget stuff, just because he wasn't given an opportunity to do the boundary wide receiver stuff, doesn't mean he isn't capable of doing those things. And to me, I think the most important aspect of our offense last year, outside of Josh Allen's development, was field position. And we got that field position because of Andre Roberts. We were starting around the 50-yard line all the time because of Andre Roberts. So I look at the trait that's missing from this wide receiver core with Krumero and Duke and Hodgins. The thing that's missing is speed. And the way I see it, we have three major needs. We need a boundary guy who can go down the field. and be that guy who sort of platoons with Gabe Davis and lets Gabe Davis continue to work the middle if it doesn't work out for Gabe Davis on the outside. You need the gadget guy, maybe a guy who can line up at running back, a guy who can do the jet sweeps, and you need a return man. So I would just bring Andre Roberts back and just get that. Just know you have your return man, and then I would look to veterans in free agency to find that boundary guy, whether it be a Kenny Stills or someone of that nature. There are plenty of boundary guys, and then look at the names the Buffalo Bills have met with. Smith Marset, Daz Newsome, Anthony Schwartz. It's those gadget type of wide receivers that they're looking at in the draft. So I think that's probably the position the Buffalo Bills are going to go in. And I think that Andre Roberts is probably going to be more affordable than we think. I think you could probably get Andre Roberts back here for 1 year, $1 million. The only guys in free agency that I think could give us return ability and boundary receiver ability are Deshaun Jackson, outside of Curtis Samuel,
right?
Deshaun Jackson and Keelan Cole. And Keelan Cole isn't exactly a burner, but he is inside outside flex. And Deshaun Jackson, you don't know what you're going to get from him from an injury standpoint. So for me, I'm bringing Andre Roberts back and knowing I have that guy who's going to give me solid field position on almost every single time he touches the ball.
So I got a comment from I'll get back to you, Nap, because you feel like you want to go back at my man Steve. Brian Barrett says I would love to add someone like Will Fuller on the offense, but he would be a little too pricey. What do you guys think about that? I think we kind of answered it with those pricey type of guys. But a guy like Will Fuller does stretch the field. What would his market be if we were to even consider bringing him into Buffalo? Nap, you can combat that. I'll let you grab that, and then you can go right back at Steve because I know you have some smoke for Steve.
So I think Will Fuller is an interesting one because when he plays, he's electric. Like he makes plays all the time when he's on the field, but he's like on the field like half of his career. So his market value is a weird one to kind of tap into because you have that talent, you have that skill, you have that production, but also you have so many question marks of how's he going to do moving forward, staying healthy. So he's a guy I would personally just stay away from because if you pay him, you're running a huge risk with Will Fuller. But in terms of Andre Roberts, the thing that worries me the most is at some point in every player's career, they hit a cliff. They fall off the cliff. And he's 33. Like, he's not getting any younger. He's not getting any faster. I know just being able to catch the ball and field the ball cleanly, it's extremely important, and I value that a lot. And Andre Roberts has been great for the Bills with that. I know people want to talk about he had a couple of muff punts, but when you look at percentage-wise, it's still better than anybody else the Bills have had anytime recently. But still, I think you have to be weary of players who are getting up there in age of relying on them too much because at some point you're not going to be able to produce at the same level. At some point you're not that all-pro player anymore. At some point you're not the player that you used to be. And I don't know if this is the year that Andre Roberts gets to that point, but I would much rather move on from him before he hits that ledge and falls off completely than watch it happen and let it derail a couple of games and hurts the season.
I will say this though, because Max Kellerman has been it's not done well for him. He kept on telling folks that
Brady's a different animal. Right? Brady's a different animal, man.
What Andre Roberts is the Tom Brady of kick and punt return.
Andre Roberts is not on the TB12 method. That's a different animal.
But here's the thing with Andre Roberts too. Every year we see those training camp videos, and he's making those toe tapping catches in the back of the end zone.
Then why isn't he playing?
He's doing things. Because why would he play? The receivers in front of him are better. But now that our receiving core has been depleted, it doesn't mean he's incapable of doing that. I'm not saying don't draft a guy. Draft Jalen Darden, draft Daz Newsome. They have return capabilities. And if we get to training camp and Daz Newsome and Anthony Schwartz or whoever we draft, Jalen Darden, they make you feel comfortable cutting Andre Roberts, cut him loose. The dude ain't getting any guaranteed money on his next contract. Bring him back as that security blanket. Worst case scenario, you get Andre Roberts putting you in solid field position and doing nothing else for you the rest of the year. I can't picture there being much of a market for him in free agency. Why not bring him back 1 year, 1.5, 1 year, 1 million? Just wait out the market. By the time the draft is over, if nobody signed him, he's going to sign here for cheap. So I'm not saying he should be immediately your first signing, but I don't think there's going to be much of a market for him, and he's a nice safety blanket to have.
Now
that's fair. I think calling him the most important free agent that we have left is a little
left?
odd. Who's left? When you're saying that he isn't going to be given guaranteed money, that you could cut him loose later on, that automatically tells me he's not the most important free agent left. I'm not saying don't give him a deal, don't give him a chance whatsoever. But if you're giving him a deal with the potential that you're just going to move on from him before the season ends, he's not the most important guy you have left.
Now, we have had Mr. Roberts, his services for 2 years now. Steve is right. He's given us that field position that has allowed our offense to thrive and to be a top 5 offense. And it's a lot in due part of the returnability of Andre Roberts. But he takes away that one spot at the receiver spot at 33 years of age. It's one of those things where it's like, thank you for your services, sir. Good day to you. Now, someone like Cordell Patterson, 29 years of age only, can run the ball, can catch the ball, and has great returnability. That would be a nice replacement for a guy over the hill, if you will, in Roberts. But I've always learned from Terrell Owens. He's a specimen. But I will say this: Terrell Owens at 40-odd age, I don't know how old he is right now. He says, "You're only as old as you feel, right? I can still run a 4.40. I can still play in now." But they have this stigma of once you've hit this age, it's a wrap for you. I tend to give a little bit of, I guess, love to those that are a little older because they may still be able to have it. Robert showed us that he's still able to return, but at 33, we got to give the young guys a chance. Now, why are we not talking about a guy like John Ross? I don't understand why he's not getting any love. I need Mitch. Mitch, can you tell me something about John Ross as to why he's not getting love? He can blazing speed. That's what we need. And for some reason, he's in his head. Everything I think that's happened to him in the Bengals uniform has been all in his head. If he comes to a team that's grounded and ready to roll, I think he'd be a great addition. What are your thoughts on a guy like John Ross?
So the thing is with John Ross, like obviously, top-notch speed and a guy that is intriguing. I mean, he was a top 10 pick. You want to think that maybe you could, get him in the Bills locker room, that culture, and maybe, turn his career around. But the problem with John Ross has been he, instead of a football player with track speed, he's a track guy trying to play football. At least that's what I get from him. It just doesn't seem like he's a real nuanced route runner or anything like that. He just kind of strikes me as a guy that can run fast in a straight line. That's kind of it. And if the Bills can get something out of him, sure, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of John Ross. I think that there are some other options they could go for that still bring him that speed, just because, again, John Ross just does not strike me as someone that really kind of has it as far as a football player.
Okay. I mean, shoot. We're going to find out because everybody's talking about Curtis Samuel, but Curtis Samuel is going to be wanting that bread.
Give me D-Jax.
A guy like John Ross.
D-Jax.
Demir Bird.
D-Jax? You looking at D-Jax?
Why not?
I would take D-Jax over John Ross.
Oh, really?
In a limited role where he returns kicks and punts, or he probably returns punts, not kicks. He returns punts and he plays 20 plays a game on offense. You reduce the risk of injury and you get that playmaking ability. I mean, he hasn't been healthy the last 2 or 3 years, but when he's been on the field, he's been darn effective. And with a quarterback like Josh Allen in a limited role, in a limited capacity, you could use him on those jet sweeps. You could use him on punt returns. You can use him to stretch the field. He could be a veteran player. Again, Stephon Diggs brought that mindset, that championship caliber mindset.
Right.
D-Jax would bring that mindset to the locker room too, and probably bring even more of that.
Isn't John Ross a younger D-Jax?
John Ross's injury history is his biggest problem, and I don't know if I'm not sure how much we've touched on it so far, but he's been in the NFL for 4 seasons, and only one of those 4 seasons he's played more than half of the games. 3 seasons now out of his 4 seasons he's been put on IR and missed at least half the season. 1 season he played 13 games. That's the most he's ever played in a single season. Every other season he's been on IR. He can't stay healthy. I'm not sure.
And in that season, how did he do statistically?
I mean, he did okay, I guess. He's just not anything special enough. And I think with his injury history, I just don't know if it's worth the risk of signing him with the chance that he's just going to end up on IR and sit anyway. I'd rather get a guy that, maybe he's a little bit older like D-Jax, but he's proven that he can play the game. And that way, there's too many risks with John Ross. There's the risk of injury, and then there's the risk that he might not pan out to be anything in the first place. So I just think that that's a little too much for me.
Remember Corey Coleman?
That's what I was thinking.
No.
Yeah, I do remember Corey Coleman. That didn't last long.
So we signed Corey Coleman. I think he's still a Giant.
So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We're gonna now go to the defensive side of the room. So we've made some significant changes on the defensive line. Right, Q Jefferson gone. Butler kept. So I want to start off with Steve. Are we okay at the defensive tackle position? Star returning. We don't know what the status is of Star. By the way, great question that you posted on Twitter. Has anybody talking about Star? What's going on with Star? Can y'all talk on that? So Star, Harrison Phillips, Ed Oliver, and Butler. I think those are our interior guys. Are we okay with that lineup right there? Or should we be looking into free agency to bring in someone that can at least help compete and help bring something to that defensive front?
In my opinion, we're not okay. In my opinion, we're absolutely not okay. But if you pose this question to Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott, I think they probably tell you they are. So first of all, I was really opposed to letting Quentin Jefferson going and retaining Vernon Butler. But, having read some stuff up, Joe Buscaglia said, Quentin Jefferson sucked at run defense and Vernon Butler was okay. So, as much as it's really nice to go and look at the top 10 pass rush interior defensive linemen on ESPN analytically and see Quentin Jefferson in the top 10 every year, because he's done it, I think, 3 years now in a row. It's nice. It's pretty. You want that type of player on your defense to rotate in and out with Ed Oliver at the 3-tech. I just don't think that's what the Buffalo Bills have in mind. I think what the Buffalo Bills have in mind is they have Star coming back. They have Vernon Butler there to play the 1-tech. Butler's even got that 3-tech, 1-tech flex. Same with Harrison Phillips, and you got Justin Zimmer. And then if you look at it, the defensive tackle they've talked to, or at least we've known they've talked to, is Levi O from Washington, and he's a 3-tech. So we all sit here on all of our shows and talk about Tyler Selvin, and we talk about Aleem McNeil, and we talk about free agency guys like Jarrell Casey. I just don't know if that's what the Buffalo Bills want at the defensive tackle position. I think they're quite all right with what they have. I think they're going to go after a guy like Danico Autry, who's got that inside-outside flex. They're going to draft a 3-tech. If they can't get a guy in the first wave of free agency, if they can't get a guy in the draft, there will probably be a solid pool of veteran players that can come in and compete after the draft. I think you can probably get on a short 1-year deal, like a 1-year prove-it deal. But at the end of the day, I would not be surprised if Ed Oliver, Star Lotulelei, Vernon Butler, Harrison Phillips, and Justin Zimmer were it next season for us at defensive tackle. Wouldn't shock me one bit. I disagree with it, but it wouldn't shock me.
Zach, what are your thoughts on that defensive tackle room? Are you content with what we have now, and we need to focus on defensive edge, or should we make some reinforcements in the middle of that line?
Well, I think that the more pressing need is edge rusher. That being said, as with Judge, I would also be a little iffy on if that were how I would feel about that interior defensive line room just going in as is. I do love Zimmer. He is actually sneaky athletic. He's sneaky fast. He's posted like the second fastest speed on a play behind Aaron Donald of any defensive tackles last year. So that's very amazing. Ed Oliver, we already know where he stands. We know that Butler's coming back on a restructured deal. And as was also mentioned, we usually like to talk about all the 1-techs that are in the draft, and there are so many talented guys. My favorite one is Jay Tufele from USC, because he also has that 3-tech, 1-tech flexibility. He is a bigger body. You could plug him in. Maybe that makes Butler expendable, even though they did just give him a restructure. But anyways, getting back to the main point, edge rusher must be where Brandon Beane's priority is, because we cannot go back in next year with that same edge rushing rotation and expect much of a different result.
Mitch, are you agreeing with that?
Focusing on these D tackles too in particular, I think it comes down to Ed Oliver. Like, when's Ed Oliver going to finally make that leap that we think he's capable of? Because if we think that he's the impactful D tackle that the Bills drafted, when they got him back in I think it was 2018, 2019, then I think, this D-line changes, because now you have yourself a difference maker in the middle. So I think it comes down to, is Ed Oliver finally going to make that jump from a player that flashes from time to time to a consistent, disruptor on the D line? But I do agree. I think edge rusher's got to be a place that an upgrade's made at some point. I was in the boat that I kind of wanted Mario Addison cut. I know they restructured him as well. I think he took a pay cut. So yeah, I agree with Zach. I think DN is definitely a position that they're going to have to upgrade because Hughes and Addison, and if they roll those two back out again, I just don't think that's going to cut it.
Now, we have some UDAs and some RFAs. So I want Steve to jump in and give us a hand with what the Bills are. I don't want to say struggling with, but what they're having to actually consider, right? So, to my understanding, we've got 3 RFAs. I got to get that right. Did I get that right?
Yes.
We got Levi Wallace. Who are the other two?
Butler and Corey Bojorquez.
Corey Bojorquez. That's right. Correct. Are we bringing any of those guys back?
I think in any other year, those 3 guys are already re-signed. And they're probably given that $2 million tender. And then once they have that security of the $2 million tender, then the Buffalo Bills are trying to work on them with a long-term extension. Because I think the Buffalo Bills would just prefer to have Ike Butker and Cody Ford duke it out at left guard next year. I think the Buffalo Bills would prefer to have Corey Bojorquez as their punter next year. I think the Buffalo Bills would like to have Levi Wallace back there in that secondary as a security blanket because they know what they have with him. Right. However, with these, you can't pay those 3 guys $6 million. You just can't. It's actually more than that. It's probably pushing 7 because it's like 2.13 or something like that. So you're pushing $7 million between those guys. But as somebody pointed out in the comment section, and as our man Damon Talbot has noted, the Buffalo Bills are talking to Corey Bojorquez right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they're having the same conversation with Levi Wallace and with Ike Butker about coming back and signing a deal that's less than $2 million. Like I said, any other year, this isn't an issue, but all 3 of those guys, I think, are products of the Buffalo Bills developmental system. These guys are products of everything Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane preach about, and that is developing the talent that you bring in, especially those depth talent, like guys like Ike Butker and Levi Wallace. And I think it stings them to the core that these guys might not be on the roster next year, but I think all 3 will hit free agency, and if there's a market for them, they're probably gone because I just don't envision the Buffalo Bills wanting to spend that kind of money on those 3 guys. I think of the 3, I'd most want Ike Butker back because I'd like the security blanket if Cody Ford flames out at left guard.
So, and I'm gonna get Clay to answer this. So you'd rather Ike Butker to compete with Cody Ford than rather have Dane Jackson compete with the likes of Levi Wallace. Clay, are you with that?
I kind of like the idea of bringing Butker back as well. I don't think Butker's that bad. I think he's a good option to compete at the guard position. And to me, guard is a really pressing matter right now with a need to fill. Now that we've secured the tackle position and then we got Matt Milano, I don't think Feliciano's coming back anymore. I would be pretty surprised to bring him back. So I think Ike Butker might be a guy that you want to bring back as a depth guy and as a competition guy. Out of the 3 of those, I think Bojorquez probably has the most likely chance of re-signing. Ike Butker might walk, and if he does, they're going to bring somebody else in that is just like Ike Butker, where he's going to be able to come in and compete. And he's going to be a lower contract guy, and he's maybe going to be a 6-man kind of a rotation into that offensive line at the guard position. So I think Ike Butker is expendable to an extent because there's a lot of guards on the market. But Bojorquez had a great season. I think out of the 3 of those, I would most like to have him back, but I would like Butker back as well.
Now, I'm talking about the guard position and like the fact that you brought up Ike Butker. What's the status and what do you guys feel about our former 2nd round pick in Cody Ford? Nap, talk about Cody Ford, man. Are you confident in Cody Ford that he can come in and really compete?
Compete for the job or compete at a high level? That's I think that's the question is it competing for the job or competing at a high level against other teams? I'm confident he can come in and compete for the job, but it's going to take some time for me to be confident that he's going to be able to compete against the opposing defensive lines at a high level. We haven't seen that enough because he's flip-flopped back and forth at positions because they just haven't picked one for him. Everybody says he's more of a guard. He has the profile that is more of a guard. So I'm excited to see what that looks like for him when he gets the full offseason doing that, and then hopefully give him a chance in some games and maybe even just preseason games to see how that works out. I don't know, though. It's weird, and that's why I think bringing a guy like Ike Butker back is so important because you know what you have in him at the very least. If Cody Ford doesn't work out, and you don't bring Ike Bucker back, then you have an unknown commodity stepping in to play at left guard. And if he doesn't work out and you bring Ike Bucker back, then you have, at the very least, at the bare minimum, you know what you got out of Ike Bucker this past season. Right. You know you can get that again. So it gives you at least some peace of mind. Not only that, but like he could switch back and forth between left guard and right guard if you absolutely need him to. So you have that swing interior offensive lineman backup guy. Not that he's like this great guard that you need to prioritize over everybody else, but it's important.
I have to say, he's on a short leash for me, Cody Ford, a very short leash, and I am not hesitant on us bringing in 2 damn guards in this draft just to solidify if he doesn't pan out. Now, I don't know if it was Judge that made this comment, but it seems as though Brandon Beane does things in 2s, right? Was it you, Steve, that said this, or somebody mentioned that he brought in 2 receivers at one point? Then I think previous draft he brought in two guards, 2 tackles. I can't recall, but maybe he comes in and he doubles up and brings in 2 guards and says, you know what, I'm not messing around. John Feliciano may not come back. Maybe he does on some kind of cheap deal. Can't see it happening. They made their decision with Darrell Williams. So I'll go to Mitch. When looking at the way they've constructed this O-line now, we've got our bookend tackles. Mitch Morris, they brought him back on a pay cut, and you've got a question mark at both guard positions. Are you okay? And I don't want to hit the draft just yet, but are you okay with drafting a guard at first round?
I mean, I'd be okay with that. I said this, man. I think offensive line, especially when you got yourself a franchise quarterback that holds onto the ball longer than most quarterbacks in the league, building a great line to protect him, you can't put a price tag on that for me. And not to mention, we talk about the running game. And of course, I know, Rico, you're a big fan of the running back position. And I agree, you can't have nobody back there. But, you have a really good O-line. You can get a lot out of a little in the backfield as well. And that just, again, takes some pressure off Allen. So if there's a guard at 30, or if the Bills want to trade, back into the early second round, if there's a guard that they like and they want to use their pick on it, I'm by all means totally okay with that. I think there's a lot of intriguing guys too in this draft to maybe, use that selection on. So yeah, I think guard round 1, if there's a guy they like and that's the guy the highest on their board, I'm fine with them taking a guard.
All right. Now this goes for everybody. I asked you guys this question in the chat, and we've got glaring holes on this team. Guard being 1, tight end position being another, in my opinion. I think some of us may agree on that. Cornerback 2. So the free agency is going to it's going to be crazy. There's going to be payments are not going to be as plentiful as we think, but there are going to be some players that are going to be gotten at a nice price. So I made you guys choose some free agent players that you feel that would fit well with the Bills. So let's start with the tight end room. Dawson Knox, Nate Becker, and I'm missing one more, and Thomas Sweeney and Reggie Gilliam / fullback. We'll put him at tight end to play the game. Who do you see that fits in this free agency that fits well with this Buffalo Bills tight end room? And I'm going to start with let's go with Clay.
I mean, there's a lot of different options, and it all depends on how much money you want to spend too. For me, I'd rather go, as far as free agency goes, the cheaper route. Sign someone that's going to be less expensive. Don't make any blockbuster moves at the tight end position, and draft somebody as well. That would kind of be my approach, and that's my approach for most of those 3 the positions: at cornerback, at tight end, and at guard. I think that's what they need to do. Sign a less expensive free agent and draft someone as well. For me, I think Kyle Rudolph could be a decent fit. He's a versatile guy. He knows how to block. He knows how to catch. I'd be a little worried about his price. But he could probably get in for a pretty cheap deal. Jared Cook's another one. He could, if we can get Jared Cook for a vet minimum or close to it, I'd be okay with that as well. But then there's also some sleeper guys as well. Dan Arnold's a guy that doesn't have a lot of recognition around his name, but I think that he could be, he's a very athletic tight end. I think he could come in and be fairly productive for a reasonable price. And then, beyond that, I think the cheapest option that you could probably go is a guy like Richard Rodgers, who, maybe not as quite athletic, but he had a really productive productive season for the amount of snaps that he got last year. He was really productive, and you could get him at like a super low deal, like a 1.5 or a deal like for a single year or something like that. And if you're looking for a cheap option, there's a lot of ways that you could go there.
Nap, are you good with that? A Kyle Rudolph addition to this Bills room, or are you looking? Nah, I got a better choice than that.
No, I the names that Clay was throwing out there, that's kind of the route I would go to. I don't want to spend big money in free agency on the tight end position. I know that's been a lot of the talk amongst Bills Mafia is that like, well, we need to get this top tier tight end. And if we pay a guy like Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith, then all of a sudden the offense is just so much more dynamic. And I just don't see that, because if you look at like Hunter Henry is going to cost so much money, where at that point, is he really worth the value that you're paying him? Jonnu Smith is going to cost not as much money, but he reminds me a whole lot of Charles Clay, where a lot of athletic ability, but is it really going to work out for the money you give him? Like, he really hasn't had the stats that you would hope for a guy who's probably going to command as much as he is. Plus, there's other guys, and I know Judge has talked about it before, of like, there's other guys in the draft who can do what he does. I like the idea of just go cheap at tight end. You don't have to go like low level of just sign the worst possible guy available, but sign a guy who has some traits that can make some plays. Dan Arnold is a guy. I don't hate the idea of maybe giving a little bit of money to Gerald Everett, who's not going to cost a ton of money, but he's not going to be like a $2 million a year player. But he has some of those athletic traits you'd be looking for. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of money at the tight end position, because it's a wide receiver-centric offense. Mm-hmm. So if the Bills are going to spend more money, I'd rather do it at wide receiver and then fill in the gaps at tight end.
You know what? You guys both made a point that because I'm thinking maybe we do need to spend something in the tight end room. But listening to you guys say, well, not necessarily. Is it going to affect our offense that much, especially because we're a receiver-centric team? Now I'm kind of switching my gears a little bit. Steve, your thoughts on that tight end room?
I disagree with that. That tight end is not a big need. I think that a lot of the issues that the Buffalo Bills had in the running game last year, I think a lot they might point to the fact that they didn't have a tight end. And if you watched what what Tampa Bay did to Kansas City in the Super Bowl, go to 12 personnel and run the ball down their throats, I think Sean McDermott looks at that and says, why can't we do that? Why can't we go from spread to 12 personnel with the snap of a finger like Tampa Bay does and run the ball down people's throats? You know, we're from Buffalo. It's cold weather. There's wind sometimes. I think that Sean McDermott, in his heart of hearts, will want to address the tight end position this offseason, especially a guy like Brian Daboll, who comes from a system like New England where they utilize a ton of tight ends. So Kyle Rudolph will be the perfect addition, in my opinion, because he gives you what Dawson Knox doesn't. He's a bigger, taller guy who can work the seam, whereas a guy like Dawson Knox is more of an F tight end and works underneath. Obviously, Jonnu Smith would be pretty ideal. But he's another guy who's more like an F tight end who can also stretch the field. So, I mean, Jonnu Smith is just the complete package, but I think that's a pipe dream at this point. Trading for a Zach Ertz is another guy who could work the seam and block. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to see the Buffalo Bills add a guy in free agency, whether it be a Gerald Everett, whether it be a Jared Cook, a Chris Manhertz. I don't think it'll be a Dan Arnold, because I don't think Dan Arnold can block. So I think it'll be a guy who has the ability to work the seam and a guy who has the ability to block. And then I think they're going to draft a guy too. In the perfect world, I would just purely draft the two guys, but I don't know how comfortable the Buffalo Bills would feel with, two rookies in Dawson Knox. But I would take Kerry Angeline in the 5th round and Tony Polja in the 6th round, and I'd be completely okay with Angeline and Knox and Polja. But I don't think the Buffalo Bills would. I think that this is a position the Buffalo Bills, they want to get back to 12 personnel. They want to have that in their back pocket to utilize. I think they want to be able to run the ball down people's throats when they need to. So I think that tight end is probably going to be the position that they target the most, in my opinion, in free agency.
This question goes to the panel. Does Dawson Knox finally put it together going into year 4, year 3, year 4? I don't know how long he's been on the team. Does he put it together, for crying out loud? Somebody tell me, year 3? Yeah, he's going to year 3. Excuse me. Does he put it together? I'll give it to Mitch. Don't hold back. You let me know. Is it time that he put it together, or are we wasting time with this guy?
I think that there's a lot of pressure on Dawson Knox this year. He's got to show some consistency. And I understand, he didn't, He didn't play tight end in high school. He was in an offense in college that just did not utilize the tight end position at all. He doesn't have a lot of snaps as being a tight end. I get that. But as I've said, this team's in a championship window, and eventually they need to get consistent production out of the tight end room, regardless of how big of a piece it is in their offense or not. Like the drops, the missed blocks, like the mistakes from Dawson Knox, eventually it's either he's got to step up to the plate or they got to bring somebody in. So does he figure it out this year? I really don't know, but there's pressure on him to finally show that he can be the tight end the Bills believe in, because again, they got a championship window and they need to capitalize on this, and they can't have guys dropping wide open passes, in the process. So I think that Dawson Knox, this is his year. It's either he shows up or he's out.
I'll agree with that as well. I'll add on. I think Dawson Knox, it's all about consistency with him. He has these flashes of, great athletic ability where he's making incredible catches, where he's twisting his body and doing a toe tap while doing it. And then, he's running through guys. He's stiff arming guys. He's got every single tool to be a successful tight end. He just needs to be able to be consistent with it now and not drop as many passes. Don't fumble the ball. And, just put it all together really is kind of what you said. If he's able to do it, if he's able to just minimize the amount of mistakes that he's making, he can be a really successful tight end in the league, because he does have the athletic tools to be able to do that.
I'm gonna put Nab, go ahead, jump on there.
I think one thing with this is that it really depends on what you mean when you say he puts it all together. I was just looking up tight end stats, and it doesn't look like this list is complete, but the list that I found shows 4 players, because I'm adding on with Travis Kelce, 4 players over 700 yards receiving. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, Mike Gesicki last year. That's it. What does it mean when you say he puts it all together? A guy that the Bills Mafia has talked about a lot, Hunter Henry. He only had 613 receiving yards last year. Is that putting it all together? Is that all we're looking for, is 500 yards and all of a sudden he's this great tight end that we love? Because that's really good statistical production for a tight end. So when we say he puts it all together, are we just looking for him to get another 200 yards receiving, or are we looking for him to make that jump to being a 1,000-yard receiving tight end? Because it seems like Bills Mafia really, really wants that 1,000-yard receiving tight end. And if Dawson Knox can't get to that point, he wasn't good enough. But we have to remember that just doesn't happen. So if he can get 500 yards receiving, that's really good production out of the tight end position. And I think we would need to be happy with that.
So I'm going to jump on there. Let me please jump on there. So while it's fresh in my mind, statistically, do we need another 200, 300, 400 yards? It's not about really the statistics. Everybody talks about how statistics can play a part or can tell a false story. Putting it together, for me, when it comes to Dawson Knox, is for my quarterback to trust you and my OC to trust you. You haven't put it together if I can use you as a decoy to do all these things, right? Nobody respects Dawson Knox right now. They don't. If you look at the tail end of the season, he wasn't doing any deep dig routes. They were all close proximity throws just to get him comfortable enough to catch the ball there. I didn't bring you to Buffalo to catch. I can put Gilliam to do that. I brought you so you can actually stretch the field and do that. And when I give you the opportunity to catch, but you're dropping the ball, so you're not putting it together. And then your blocking is suspect at times, but for the most part is decent. So we want to see him put all of it together. It doesn't have to be necessarily statistics per se, but can my quarterback trust you? And right now they're all buddies, right? They get in the end zone and they're doing that whole movie skit. I don't know what that movie's from, by the way. I have no idea. But anyway, other than that camaraderie that you guys have together, put it together on the goddamn field, my man. Right? I want consistency from you. I want to be able to trust you when I give you that deep route, that you're going to catch it consistently, not here and there. And I think that's what most people may think when they say putting it all together, because there's untrustworthy moments with Dawson Knox that has you going, golly, man. Tyler Kroft was brought in for that. Gilliam brought in for that. So for sure they're going to be potentially looking at tight end. And this draft is full of them, full of some good ones that we can potentially land. So that will be interesting to see on what route we do with free agency and come the draft. So I think it was Steve that was about to jump in. So Steve, jump in. I hope I didn't take away from what you're going to say.
No, you're good. I just think at the end of the day, who cares if he develops even further? I think we all want him to turn into George Kittle, or we all want him to turn into Rob Gronkowski, because he definitely has that ability. Physically, he has that ability. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who could play fullback. This is a guy who could play that F tight end role where he, catches all that stuff underneath and he can bowl those people over. This is a guy who can play special teams. This is a guy who is really good in the red zone. I mean, he's caught a ton of touchdowns in both of his years in Buffalo. So if that's all he is, if that's all he ever is, he's an affordable guy who can be your TE2 for the next 10 years. Sounds pretty good to me for a 3rd round pick. I think the onus is on the Buffalo Bills to go out and find a guy to complement him. Like I said, a guy who can work the seam, a guy who can also run block and run that 12 personnel with him, a guy who can do that downfield stuff. So if I'm the Buffalo Bills, like if this is his ceiling, if this is what he is, I think that's pretty solid for a 3rd round pick, especially if there's no market for him when he hits free agency and you can retain him for a fairly reasonable contract. He could be your TE2 for the next decade. And that wouldn't bug me one bit, because he's got versatility and he can do a bunch of different things, and he could be a good little gadget player for you and a guy you can trust in run blocking and on special teams and in the red zone.
Now,
I don't know. I'm not looking to cut the dude, because I think he has a role on this team.
Right.
I think at the tight end position, the Bills have to make a decision. Do we want to, like Judge is talking about, do we want to go more 12 personnel? Do we want to run those sets more? Because if they do, then I think to tie it full circle with the wide receiver position, then they don't have to make a bigger move at wide receiver and bring somebody else in, because they're probably more okay at the wide receiver position if they make a move at tight end. But if they want to continue running the same offense stylistically that they ran this past year, where it is a more wide receiver centric offense, then it doesn't make as much sense to put that money into the tight end room. So I think whether they spend money at tight end or at wide receiver, it comes down to that decision. Do we want to run a wide receiver focused offense, or do we want to run more 12 personnel and get the tight end included more? So I think that's the decision they have to make.
I do want to make sure. Go ahead. Who that Zach was going to say something? Go ahead, Zach.
I will say this, and this is about just all the chatter about tight ends. The Buffalo Bills have never really had that type of tight end, the Kittle, the Kelsey, the Gronk. All time, the best tight end in Bills history, yards-wise as a receiving threat, was Pete Metzelaars and Scott Chandler. So when everyone says they expect Dawson Knox to reach that level of a Darren Waller or Kittle or Kelsey, that might not be realistic. But statistically speaking, if we wanted to put a bit of a benchmark for this year to determine whether or not you'd feel a bit more comfortable, I would say maybe 45 to 50 catches, 500 yards, maybe like 5 receiving touchdowns, something like that. Something that's somewhat attainable for him and stylistically could fit into the approach. If he's that check down guy or that like short yardage check down tight end, that's a bit realistic. And then you just bring someone else in who can do the deep stuff. Maybe you bring in a Jared Cook to help him refine those receiving tools, because he's been around the block. He's been on contenders over the past few years. He caught passes from Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr when they had that good season. He's someone that I think is a perfect complement in the tight end room that shouldn't cost too much money. And then you just go ahead and invest in receiver. Maybe you draft a Tommy Tremble in the 4th, 5th round to try to get that younger blocker who could develop into that Dawson Knox type guy as well. So you don't have to use that much capital on the tight end room, but also enhance it a bit.
All right. Now, before we switch gears, I need to get this part off, because earlier today, you guys were mentioning something about speed. We need speed, and we lost our deep threat in John Brown. I hate to break it to you, fellas, but our best deep threat on the team wasn't John Brown last year. It was Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis was the one with the big plays. Gabe Davis was the one going up for contested catches. John Brown, that is not his game. Not to go back on the John Brown talk, but getting downfield wasn't really an issue for us. We had guys that get downfield. Diggs can get downfield, no problem. Gabe Davis can do the same thing, 4.5 speed, but he's got long strides, right? So he can get downfield. Now, I'm gonna put this is off the cuff. I'm gonna put you guys on the spot, and I hope you guys are good and witty enough to be able to answer these. So I see the smirk already on Clay's face on the bottom, so I'm gonna start with him. So Clay, defend this player to retain him on the team and talk him up. All right. So that's what it's going to be. I'm going to give each one of you guys this player, and you've got to be an advocate for this player. Are you ready, Clay?
Sure.
Here it is. Your player is Ed Oliver. Talk
Oh,
about
great. Yeah, I love Ed Oliver. This kind of goes back to the Quentin Jefferson conversation as well. Why did they get rid of Quentin Jefferson? Because Ed Oliver is Quentin Jefferson younger. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me. He can be all that pass rush production and everything like that. The reason Ed Oliver wasn't a successful defensive tackle in a lot of people's eyes last year is because he wasn't getting those numbers. He had to play the one tech a lot, and that's just not where he's supposed to be playing. And the whole retaining of Vernon Butler thing, I think Quentin Jefferson's really kind of stuck into that 3-tech role. That's really what he's there to do. He's a pass rush 3-tech guy. That's exactly the kind of role that Ed Oliver should be playing as well. Vernon Butler can play 3-tech or the 1-tech. So I think he's more valuable as a versatility guy, and he's cheaper as well. I mean, the amount of money that they were paying Jefferson, I just don't know if it was worth it. But I think Ed Oliver's he's going to be fine. Once he gets, I think Star Lotulelei was a big reason of why he had success, halfway and later on in his rookie season. If you go back and watch the Cowboys game from the Thanksgiving Cowboys game from 2019, Ed Oliver had a really good game. And the reason he had a really good game is because Star Lotulelei is taking up 2 blockers and he's allowing Ed Oliver to be just one-on-one with a single lineman. If you can get Ed Oliver one-on-one with one lineman at a time, he's going to be really deadly. And he can be deadly in run stopping and in pass rush situations. So I'm a huge Ed Oliver fan. Just because his numbers don't look great doesn't mean he's not productive. I think he's a really good defensive tackle.
Okay, you set the bar, my friend. You set the bar. So I'm going to move it on over. I'm going to move it on over to Judge. Judge, you ready for this? Defend this player, Cody Ford.
Hey, if you look at offensive linemen around the league, look at John Feliciano. Everybody loves John Feliciano, right? Everyone wants John Feliciano back. They're going to miss him so much. Well, what did the Oakland Raiders think after taking him in the 4th round after 4 years? They let him go. They thought he was a bust. It takes offensive linemen longer to develop. And if you look at Cody Ford's film, especially his film when he's playing left guard, there were flashes of some really good play there. So if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm picking one spot for Cody Ford. I'm making that left guard, and I'm putting my investment in him this season, and I'm letting him play it out at left guard. I think it takes longer for interior offensive linemen to develop. I think that Cody Ford is going to end up at the end of his career being an above average offensive lineman. But I think the Buffalo Bills need to stop playing games, put him in a spot, and leave him there. And I think that best spot is left guard.
Okay, Judge. All right, my man. You went with confidence on that one. I like that. Mitch, you ready? This one's for you.
All right.
Defend this player. Butler.
Ooh. All right, Vernon Butler. All right, Vernon Butler. Well, first of all, he's got versatility. He can play the 1-tech. He can play 3-tech. And not to mention, in the second half of the season, we started to see some flashes, started to see some of the athleticism that got him as a first-round pick. He can give you a little bit in the run game. He supposedly has a little bit of pass rush ability. He didn't really have it this year, but he did have 6 sacks his last year at Carolina. Obviously, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, the Carolina connection, they believe in them. That's the reason why they, obviously they wanted to keep him around, so they restructured his deal. And hopefully with Star Lotulelei having a real veteran presence in that D tackle room can kind of help bring him along a little bit and help him develop his game. So at the very least, Vernon Butler, he's a depth piece. You can use him in the rotation, and maybe you can get some good play out of him.
Okay, Mitch. All right. Let me toughen it up a little bit. This might be a little tough. I'm going to give this one to Zach. You ready for this one?
Sure.
I want you to defend this player and defend this player by trying to bring this player back. Levi Wallace, defend him.
All right. Well, first of all, starting experience. He's been their starter for 2.5, almost 3 years already. If they didn't like him, they would have let him walk years ago. He's not that bad. Last year, his completion percentage allowed was less than 1% higher than Trey White, and he was targeted only 6 more times. Plus, let's remember, a team that has a shutdown corner, they're going to target the opposite corner more. So, of course, Levi Wallace is going to look worse because he's targeted more. And even though I said his completion percentage allowed wasn't that much worse, I'll even take it one step further. His quarterback passer rating allowed when targeted was better than Shaquille Griffin, William Jackson, Marshawn Lattimore, Darius Slay. I can keep going. There are so many more guys. these guys, Casey Hayward too, by the way, the guy who's just released that some people are saying they should replace him with. There are so many guys that Levi Wallace was better than who the fans want him replaced with. He's not that bad a corner. The problem may be the fact that he's not as aggressive as Dane Jackson, who I absolutely love and maybe should be ahead of Levi Wallace. But Wallace is a known commodity in the system, like we previously mentioned. He's a process guy. He developed in here. They know what he's like. Bring him back. In a normal year, I would have said give him the second round tender so that because he's a decent CB2 for a fraction of the cost of the market rate. But obviously that's besides the point because this cap year is so strained that that's not going to happen. So I would not be surprised if they bring him back. Maybe they sign a veteran, a cheap veteran, again, maybe like not Josh Norman, but maybe another guy like Josh Norman, or they draft someone in the draft to hopefully develop in that. But Levi Wallace is the original process CB2 they have.
Okay.
He was good enough for a couple of years. He's good enough to stick around. He's our guy. Bring him back.
All right. I respect it. There's some squeaky moments, but I gave you that. That was a tough one because Levi Wallace, people were like, "Yo, good riddance. We're good. See you later." But you had to defend him, and you defended him very well, sir. Now, are you ready for this one?
Do I have to follow the four of them? Really?
Yeah, you do. This one. I good luck with this one. Defend Mitch Morris. Defend him.
I mean, the quarterback-center relationship is one of the things that isn't talked about enough. When you have a center who works really well with your quarterback, like he is the quarterback of the offensive line. There's a reason that the Bills went out and paid him a lot of money. I know he just took a pay cut, but that's not because he's a bad center. It's because they want to help the team. So the relationship that he has with Josh Allen, commanding the offensive line, helping point out protections, calling out protections, helping him with the defense and figuring out what's the defense going to do? That's going to be super important, even if Josh Allen is a really good quarterback already. Having a center who can help you out with that and make some calls on the offensive line and shift the protection as needed, that's really important too. Mitch Morris, I know he's not the best run-blocking offensive lineman, but what he does in pass protection is extremely vital to the offensive line's success. And you heard Deion Dawkins talk about it last offseason, mentioning how helpful a guy like Morris was to play, even though he wasn't directly next to him. Having him there was huge in helping Deion Dawkins get better as a player. So I don't know how, I don't see why I would need to defend Mitch Morris because he is such a good player that it's not like he took a pay cut because he's bad. He just took a pay cut because it's the necessary thing to do in this offseason.
There we have it.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
How about we defend Mitch Morris against the Buffalo Bills? Because Mitch Morris is one of, if not the best pass blocking center, as Randy Hardman said in the comment section, in the NFL in a pass blocking offense. People got mad at Mitch Morris because he couldn't run the ball. The Buffalo Bills tried to scapegoat Mitch Morris last season for not being able to run the ball. How about you get some big fat guards next to him because you know that's his weakness? How about you do that? So this season, go out and get Gabe Jackson at right guard, get Cody Ford at left guard, and maybe let Ike Bucker walk and draft a guy to be your swing offensive lineman and make sure they're all big, they're all fat, and they can all run block. And that'll take the pressure off of Mitch Morris.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, that's exactly what I was
John E. Walker asked me to defend Singletary. You know what? I'll defend Singletary because I was a little hard on Singletary, but I will say this.
David had some nice words.
Yeah, so exactly right. So defend Singletary. Here's the deal. Singletary came in as a rookie having no expectations, none whatsoever, because he had Frank Gore to lean on, the savvy vet in Frank Gore. He was in Frank Gore's hip pocket all day, every day. That's all you saw. Any footage you saw of Frank Gore, you saw little Devin Singletary right next to him. Now, Frank Gore departs. Singletary is now the guy. They draft a rookie. There is no one there to lean on. He's got to be the guy. So I think a little bit of pressure was put onto him, right? Not only that, they weren't heavily needing to run the ball because all we did was throw the rock. Now, defending him this year for next year is that he's going to learn from having no veteran guy, got to depend on your own, on your line, and going through the motions. And going into year 3, that's when most players take their leap. So I'm expecting a big leap from our guy, Devin Singletary, because guess what? They drafted another running back, and they potentially could draft another. So you have no choice but to step your game up. So I think that he takes a bigger leap this year, takes a better leadership role, and he's going to have to defend against Zach Moss, because Zach Moss, the guards were changing a little bit with Zach Moss getting more touches. So there's going to be room to take over again to try to keep his role as number one back. But like we've seen, it's going to be a complimentary role. So he just needs to continue to do his 5 yards of carry, right? Be patient behind the line. Your vision is there. Just stay patient and do it. They just like my man Judge said, bring some fatties, bring some hoggies, and maybe we get back to having that nice run game, because it's been such a long time. I've always known the Bills to have solid run game, whether it was with Fred Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, CJ Spiller, Willis McGahee, Travis Henry. I've always known the Bills to have a good run game. Pass game was never great, but the run game was always solid. You can always depend on that. This was the first year that I was like, oh, damn, we're not running the ball so well. So Devin Singletary, I think, will take a step forward, knowing all the things that happened to him this past year. I think he does well. Now, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. There's a position group, in my opinion, and I hope we're all on the same page, that not a lot of people are talking about, that we should be in attacking a free agency or draft, or retaining the players that we have now in this position group. Do you have an idea which position group I'm talking about, Clay Troya?
I don't know which position group you're talking about, to be honest. I think there's a few position groups that definitely need, where we should be looking in free agency, and we should be looking to keep some of the guys that we have. But I feel like we've talked about a lot of those already. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
All right. Mitch, what do you think?
I don't. Is it running back?
It is not running back, sir.
All right, damn.
Now, what do you think? There's a position group that not a lot of people are talking about it, and rightfully so. But if something were to drastically happen in this position group, we might be in the poop.
That's the quarterback.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So the quarterback position, we don't talk about this position as often, and rightfully so, we shouldn't, because we have a franchise quarterback, right? However, who is going to back up our quarterback next year? Are we drafting one? Are we going to go with Mr. Fromm, or do we bring back Bitcoin Barkley? Let me start with Judge. Judge, what are your thoughts on that backup quarterback?
I wouldn't re-sign Matt Barkley, and I wouldn't bring anyone in personally. I think that if you look at the free agent pool of all the, like, any other year, if the salary cap this year was $215 million, I'd say go chase Fitz. I'd say go chase like Cleveland did, like a Case Keenum type of quarterback, because I think the position is important. However, we got no money right now. Like, we have to mortgage our future to add any more money to add any of these free agents. I'm not mortgaging my future for a backup quarterback. So to me, of all the guys that we can afford, guess who's got the highest upside? The guy who was SEC starting quarterback for 3 years, played in the college football playoff, all these different things. Of all the quarterbacks that the Buffalo Bills can reasonably acquire, Jake Fromm has the highest upside. And then behind Jake Fromm is Davis Webb, a guy who has been here for a couple of years now, knows our system back and forth. We saw last year at OTAs in Florida, he was running those OTAs. He was a 4th round draft pick for a reason. He does have some physical abilities coming out of that Cliff Kingsbury system at Texas Tech, and then going and playing with Sonny Dykes at Cal. So we have 2 quarterbacks on the roster with probably higher upside than anyone we can get in free agency. If you want to chase a Joe Flacco or a Blake Bortles because you want that game experience, go for it. But if I'm the Buffalo Bills and the situation we're in, I'm just sticking with Fromm and Davis.
And I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you with that, because whether you guys know this nugget or not, but when quarterbacks showed up for that, that Florida training that they all did, just the players loan, the person that was running the whole thing and orchestrating everything was Davis Webb. Davis Webb was like a mini coach out there. So I'm completely at ease with the quarterback position that we have right now. I have no bones about having Davis Webb or Fromm, because we're only gonna have 2 of them anyway. There's gonna be one that's gonna be inactive, so those 2 can duke it out on who takes over. But quarterback position was one. Now there's another group that I'm looking into that is kind of weak right now, and that's the special teams. Right? We got our kicker, fantastic. We don't have our punter just yet, and we don't have any return guys. So those are the ones that I'm kind of somewhat concerned about. But we will tackle that in free agency. So, which brings me to my next. So we have about adjusted $9 million to $10 million in cap space right now, give or take. I don't know if you guys have the exact number, but I think it's around that range. Do you consider, just to give you a little bit more money to play with, restructuring the three top dogs on our team? Dawkins, Diggs, and Trey White. Do you restructure them to give us a little bit more money now so we can kind of play around in free agency and strengthen our team so we can make that push again in this very small window that we have to go back to the AFC Championship, let alone the Super Bowl? And I'll start with Nap. Nap, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? As long as they're receptive to the idea. If they're not receptive to the idea, then that causes other problems in itself. But if they're receptive to the idea of maybe extend for a year and push some money out or something like that, or whether it's restructuring and making it a bonus of some sort, however they want to do that, if they're receptive to the idea of restructuring in some way, then yeah, why would you not do that to give yourself a little bit more money? And I know it's kicking the can down the road with contracts and everything, but the salary cap is going to balloon once new TV deals are up anyways. So I'm more than comfortable to do that and deal with whatever minimal consequences there are down the road. If that means making a Super Bowl run for the next year, 2, maybe even 3 years, if you can get some guys in here who are really going to help the team, why would you not do that?
And I'm okay with it, but there are some people that feel like, whoa, that is an absolute no-go, because just take a look at the Saints. The Saints have done that, and they're in cap jail. So some people are like, you know what? Don't fix what's not broken, and leave it the way things are. But in a not for long season, right? You can't have success for very long. So if you have a window right now to win it, why not do everything you can to solidify that? So Zach, are you against extending those three, or leave things the way they are? And we already have a strong enough roster. Just keep it pushing and just bring out the little vet minimum guys to this team. What do you think on that?
Okay, first I'll respond to that question, and then I want to make a quick point about the backup quarterback situation.
Ron, go ahead.
Dealing with this, I would say that I can see both sides of it. I can see the potential for restructuring that and adding some years on at the end. That does seem like a savvy way to address the cap situation this year. And then possibly it would work, assuming that the cap goes back up in the next couple of years. But let's think about the other way. What if the cap is affected beyond this year? What if the economic impact from the pandemic, what if that affects it down the line, the next couple of years? I know the NFL said that you can't borrow against the future cap to compensate this one, but what if the cap does end up being a little bit different, and then you kind of have to do this again? Like Rico, like you said, the Saints have been kicking the can down the road for years to get contention. That being said, Saints fans would be happy with the 13 years of Breeze contending that they were able to get from kicking the can down the road. And the Bills are kind of in a similar position to do that. Obviously, they're already locked in, though Diggs may end up having to get an extension in the near future anyway. So I guess all this to say, maybe if they're receptive to it, why not? Because if they're going to do it and you're going to have to do these moves eventually, why not do it now so you automatically have that in place over the next couple of years, and then you just, again, figure it out down the road like every contending team has been doing every so often. Now, to get to my point about backup quarterback,
right?
Some people will say, obviously, first I just want to say, let's appreciate the fact now we're having a quarterback 2 controversy instead of a starting quarterback controversy.
Right.
That's refreshing. It's amazing to have that. But I did tweet this out earlier this morning. We have our franchise guy. Now you got to have franchise guy insurance. Because, again, if he goes down, we saw against the Raiders, against the Chargers, he had those injuries where thank God they weren't worse, because if they were, season was over. Matt Barkley was not going to be able to produce that. Nothing against him, but we can upgrade there. Obviously, Jake Fromm, we don't know what we got until he gets out on the field. And to be honest, as much as I'd like to see what he can do, I don't want him being thrown into the fire mid-season in playoff contention, something like that. I don't want to figure out whether or not he's worth it during the season when we're in the heat of the moment. So why not go get a veteran, get someone with a little bit of starting experience? Maybe I did release an article last week where I had 10 ideal, and I will emphasize ideal options. These are not my top practical options. I understand we live in a totally different world than we did a week ago, where we didn't have Milano and Darrell Williams locked up.
Right.
So that's not feasible anymore. But if you could get someone with a little bit of starting experience, maybe you could get a Mitch Trubisky on a 1-year deal that he like swallows his pride like Jameis did going to New Orleans this year. If you could do that, go get him. He has a similar athletic style, similar sort of playing style to Josh Allen. That would be my preference for a backup quarterback, is to get someone who's a bit more similar to the guy he's possibly replacing, so you don't have to change too much in the offense. That being said, I understand it may not be entirely feasible. There's some option out there that you could probably go after.
Right.
Whether or not it is obviously probably not Jacoby Brissett. Maybe, like I said, maybe Mitchell Trubisky. Maybe there's someone else. Maybe think outside the box. Look at Kansas City. They have this young guy, Jordan Tayamu. He was a stud in the XFL. He's not a high-profile name. He could very well get cut. He's been on their practice squad. If he's available in any sort of way this offseason, I think you grab him, because he has shown he can play professional football, and I really like that kid. He is very similar to Josh Allen. I think he would be a perfect backup.
Let me ask the panel a question here. Do you know the backup quarterback for the Cardinals? Anybody?
It's that guy from the CFL whose name I can't pronounce.
It doesn't matter. So let me go on to the next one.
He was terrible in that game he had to play. Geno Smith.
Geno
Smith.
Was that a question mark, or was that like, I know?
No, it's Geno Smith.
He was in Seattle.
Mine was a question.
Right? And the reason I asked those questions is because I had to do it for myself. When I brought up the backup quarterback position, it doesn't matter who your backup quarterback is when you have a franchise quarterback. Who's the backup quarterback for Tampa right now? I have no idea.
Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah, well, he's a free agent.
He puts out some fire Instagram posts where he's extra confident in himself. I'm not gonna lie.
Blaine Gabbert. Okay, so I bring that up because when you have a franchise quarterback, you live and die with your franchise quarterback. You don't really give a damn who the damn backup quarterback is. In this case, Fromm or Davis, that's the way I see it. Now, Scott Blakely mentioned something really cool. He says, let's just say we do restructure the big three guys. What are we doing with that money anyway? Who is it that we desperately need so badly that we need to restructure those guys and go and grab? And that's a fair point, because I don't think there's anybody glaring that we necessarily need to go and start messing around with people's contracts. I think what we have now with this $10 million, I'm sure there's going to be a bit of a movements here or minimal signings here. But like Judge said, this isn't going to be a flashy free agency. It's not. It's going to be take what we need and then focus on bringing the young guys up. And plus, we have a slew of young guys on the roster right now that are going to be coming up in the names of like Darrell Williams or Mike Love or Trey Adams, for crying out loud. Can anybody tell me what's going on with Trey Adams? I know he was a sought after guy. I think was an undrafted guy, but Trey Adams could come in and do big things. Who knows? Development is key. Do we develop enough? Soon to find out. Now, last bit for me, and I want to get each and every one of yours top 3 free agents that you feel would fit best for this Bills team. Your top 3. Mitch, I'm going to start with you. Your top 3 free agents right now, before this whole big free agency frenzy starts, that you feel like, you know what, these are the 3 that I want on this team.
I mean, the one guy for me that the day he got released, I got a little excited. And I don't know what his market's going to be like. And he might be too much now after Darrell Williams and Milano got signed. But Patrick Peterson is a guy that I've kind of had my eye on. And I just think that he could come in. He's got that LSU connection with Trey White. I know that's a guy Trey looks up to. And not only that, but he's a veteran. And sure, he's maybe not the same shutdown guy that he was back in the day with Arizona. But he's by no means a bad player. He could still play in this league. And plus, you put him at CB2. He's not the main cornerback, on this defense. I think you could still get a lot out of him. I mean, I know he's getting a little older, but I think he's still got some juice in the tank. So Patrick Peterson is a guy that I personally really like.
Do you have any other ones, or that's your main one? I wanted to give you 3.
And then, and then another guy. I mean, kind of sticking with the cornerback. I'm also a big fan of Shaq Griffin from Seattle, and I just think for him, he's athletic, which is something Levi isn't. I mean, he's a guy who ran a 4.38. He's got a 38.5-inch vertical, so he's got some explosive ability. And this was a guy who had to be the CB1 in Seattle's defense, and he's not a bad player, but he's by no means cornerback number 1. What was that? I think you might have froze, but
yeah.
So I think
I didn't hear that last part. We all froze there.
Yeah, no, you froze. I was waiting to hear what you were going to say.
I said, can he catch?
Can he catch? Honestly, haven't really looked into it a ton, but I just think that in our defense, where he doesn't need to have the pressure of being a CB1, where he can be cornerback 2, and he can kind of make plays and not have to go against number 1 receivers. I think that you could get something out of him. And then I'm also a big fan of Dan Arnold. I just think that the Bills have not had an athletic stretch the field tight end ever. And I just think that with an offense that likes to throw the ball pretty far down the field, generally speaking, to have a tight end that can get down the field and make some plays, I just think that's kind of an intriguing option to have in the offense. I'm not saying he needs to be the focal point. You still got Diggs, you still got Beasley, you still got Gabe Davis, but Dan Arnold could kind of be sort of a nice complement to Dawson Knox, where you have Knox underneath and you have Arnold over the top down the seam. So I think those are 3 guys that Peterson might be a little hard to get now with the cap, but I think Griffin and Arnold are guys that could work with the cap room this team has.
Okay. Clay, top 3.
Yeah, top 3 for me. I'm sticking with similar positions. For me, it's tight end, corner, and guard are the 3 positions that I think we really need to go after in free agency. And so if I have to bring it down to 1 for each of those positions, I think at guard position, it's kind of tough. There's kind of 3 guys. Gabe Jackson, I think, might be a little too expensive. We can get Gabe Jackson cheap. That's the guy that I want for sure. But for me, there's other guys that are going to be cheaper that can still be productive. Nick Easton was a Saints cap casualty. He's a pretty good pass blocker. Forrest Lamp, another good pass blocker from the Chargers, but I think for me, I'd have to go with Austin Blythe from the Rams. I think he's probably a pretty good option. It could get him on a pretty good contract. It'd be very reasonable for the amount of cap space that we're working with. Corner, I'm going to go with William Jackson. I think value versus production, I think he's probably the best value that you can get for the production that you're going to get out of him at the corner position. He's honestly a pretty good corner. So I like William Jackson. There's other guys too. I think Brian Poole, not someone we're talking about enough at the corner position. He's productive for who he is. He played on the Jets, so no one really cares about him apparently. But you could get him for really cheap. You could get him for $2 to $3 million cap hit this season, and he would be a productive corner. Corner to compete at the corner 2 position. For tight end, I think I also have to go with Dan Arnold.
Okay.
Value versus production, athleticism. I like it all. And, I like Richard Rodgers too. I think he's kind of a sleeper pick for me just because he's sneaky productive. And we know that he can make contested catches. He's a bigger guy. He can block. I like him as an athlete. And for the amount of money that we would spend on him, I think it'd probably be worth it.
I really like Brian Poole. Listen, Poole?
Isn't he a slot corner though? Or am I mistaken?
He's on the shorter side, so he probably would have to go. He might go into the slot a little bit, but he played outside too.
Okay. He's physical, and I like that. All right, Clay. Actually, no, you know what? Judge, your top 3.
Oh boy. I think I had similar positions. I'm going to do 4. I'm going to throw my first one out there. Terrell Basham from the New York Jets. I'll save it for Kyle. But I'll save it for Kyle. I will save it for Kyle. And I will just say that despite the fact that his Ohio University beat my UB Bulls in the MAC title game last night, I'm going to forgive Kyle because of Terrell Basham, and I will give him Terrell Basham. But the 3 I'm going to go with, corner Malcolm Butler. He's a veteran corner. He's played in zone. He's played in man. He gives you a little bit more versatility, I think, than a Levi Wallace to do some things like playing man, and he's got experience in zone coverage as well. So Malcolm Butler at the corner position, I think would be a great fit. At guard, Gabe Jackson, Trey Turner, or Kevin Zeitler. Give me one of the 3 to play right guard and Cody Ford to play left guard. And then at the tight end position, I think is where I'm going to go here. Give me Chris Manhertz from the Carolina Panthers to come in and
bringing back Chris Manhertz, huh?
To be your Lee Smith replacement, a tight end you can trust in blocking, a tight end you can trust on special teams, and then go chase that other tight end in the draft. And if you're not willing to spend the draft capital on a tight end, go after Gerald Everett, because Gerald Everett is a guy who can run block, and he can run block coming from the Rams, and he probably wasn't used correctly in the passing game there in LA, and he's probably got a little bit of versatility to work the seam. So at the end of the day, I'll go with Gerald Everett, Malcolm Butler, and either Gabe Jackson, Kevin Zeitler, or Trey Turner.
I'm impressed with that. Look at Judge. Judge is confident, man. Look at him swinging in his chair. Like, yeah, I got that.
I've been talking about free agents for like a month and a half now.
I know.
I know them all like the back of my hand.
I hear it. We're gonna move over to Nap on the bottom. Your top three, my guy. Let's talk about it.
So I actually want to start out with one that I don't want. A guy that this is probably going to upset a lot of people, but I don't want Carl Lawson. I would be upset if the Bills spent the money on him for the injury history and his production. Like, you're paying for the potential. You're not paying for what you know is there. I know that he has a ton of potential, but that I just don't want to pay that type of money when he's going to just come in and be a rotational guy anyways. So I would not love to spend that type of money on a player this offseason. Any other offseason, it's a different story. This offseason, I don't want that. So my top three guys, I'm sorry to anybody that upsets, but that's just the way I feel. My top three guys, I'm going corner, defensive end, and then I'm going to go tight end. So cornerback is Jason Verrett. Yeah, Verrett. Yeah, I almost called him Jason Everett because Gerald Everett's my tight end. Jason Verrett. He's a guy who he has the experience playing opposite a true number one corner from last year, and people are going to want to go to that clip of Stephon Diggs just absolutely toasting him. But that's Stephon Diggs. That's not a number two wide receiver. When you line him up opposite of Trey White, he's going to be better than anybody that's currently on our roster. And I know he has some injury concerns. You're probably not going to have to pay him top dollar or even close to that because of his injury concerns. But when he plays, he is a very, very good corner who could play in the Bills system in a zone scheme. So he's a guy that I would love to get into Buffalo. Terrell Basham, obviously, like you saw my reaction when Judge brought him up. He's a guy who I look at as somebody who you don't have to pay a lot of money, but he has that really high, maybe not high end potential, but he has the potential to be a 6, 7, 8 sack a year guy. And you're not going to have to pay him $10 million. And that's what you're going to have to pay a lot of guys who are currently getting 6, 7, 8 sacks. Like Lawson got 8.5 sacks last year, and he's going to cost you $15 million this year. No, thank you. I want a guy like Terrell Basham who has the traits that you need. He's a former third-round draft pick, so other teams thought that he has the potential. He didn't pan out as much in his first 2 stops. But if you get him across from a guy like Jerry Hughes, get him learning from a guy like Jerry Hughes, who has a similar experience to him of he came into the league, he wasn't this superstar right away. And then you give him the change of scenery to a really, really good culture of a locker room. He's a guy who I think you could see kind of balloon statistically and start to just really come into his own. And you don't have to pay him a whole lot of money to do that. And you don't even have to have him come in and be a 70% like snap count guy. He can come in year one, be productive, and just be that rotational guy at first and then start to get better and better. And then the last guy for tight end, Gerald Everett. Oh, and not to mention Ohio University. Shout out Ohio University, Terrell Basham. Awesome. Watched him play a couple of times when I was there. I know, Judge. I'm not even sorry. I'm really not.
All right, we had our run. You guys haven't been there in like half a decade, so
that's true. We haven't. But last and not least, Gerald Everett at tight end. I would love to see a guy with his athleticism come in and once again, another guy you don't have to pay a lot of money to, but has that potential to produce. Whereas other guys have that potential to produce, but you're going to have to pay a lot of money to them. That's the type of guy I would look for, is a guy who has a high-end potential and maybe a little bit lower of a floor, but not like extremely low floor. You know what you're getting with them, but you know also what you could get down the road, but you're not going to have to break the bank for them.
That's a solid list, man. And that's hard to follow up. Zach, you ready for that?
Well, before Zach goes, I apologize. PJ Ty in the comment section said I look like Brian Dable rocking back and forth in my in my swivel chair here. So just a little homage to Brian Dable.
Well done. I like it. Well played. Well played. Zach, you got it. What's up? What are your top three?
Well, I was also probably going to say Basham too, because from all the film that I've been seeing on him, he has that speed, he has that explosiveness on the edge, and even the film against the Bills, which is the one that I've been seeing most on Twitter making the rounds. It's just like, how did he end up in position? How do you do that? How do you do that as an edge rusher? And he ends up making the run stop, and he has that speed. But to not sound repetitive, I have another guy at defensive end that I also think would be pretty good. His name is Morgan Fox from the Rams. He was the backup for Aaron Donald on that defensive line last year. He had 6 sacks last year. He's going to be one of those bargain guys. He won't command a lot of money. He can be that sort of power rusher, the run stopper, the guy to possibly replace Addison in the future. And you get him at a discount rate. And I know a lot of people say Carl Lawson. Again, he stops being a value once everyone values his value. And that's something I've been hearing on the media, where he may not even be that big of a bargain anymore. So I'm going with Morgan Fox because he can give you some of the similar attributes. He has a lot more potential to grow based on expectation on a minimal contract. So that's why I choose Morgan Fox for the defensive end. For guard, I would also have to agree Gabe Jackson or Kevin Zeitler. Trey Turner, to me, is kind of one of the guys where I kind of expect Beane to look at him because he's a former Panther. But considering that he was on the Chargers offensive line and they let him walk, and also the fact that he graded lower as a blocker than Dakota Dozier on the Jets last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Those are the things that scare me off about him. But if you could get a Kevin Zeitler or a Gabe Jackson, or if you even want a possible discount option, maybe a DJ Fluker, who is a serviceable veteran. He's played offensive tackle, but I think he's better at guard. And he could come in, be cheaper than those guys, and then you just draft someone in the second or first round. You have that veteran presence, help the rookie get up to speed, and maybe the rookie takes over. So at guard, I get Zeitler, Jackson, or DJ Fluker as a bargain guy. At tight end, I'm going to go with Jared Cook again. He's a veteran. He's a complementary piece for contenders. He was on the Saints and Packers. He was also on the Raiders when they were good that one year. He has had serviceable production as a complementary piece to a solid offense. And you may look at his stats from Green Bay and say he didn't do much, but remember in the playoffs, he had that big catch against Dallas. He has that big play ability. He's proven. You could probably get him for maybe $4 or $5 million, possibly, and that would be considered a bargain to Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry. And he could be that mentor, the Barkley to Knox's Allen, the Star to Oliver, something like that. You need that veteran presence. If you want Knox to develop, you need a veteran to help guide him, help him refine the technique. So tight end, Jared Cook. Guard, Gabe Jackson or Zeitler, maybe Fluker if you want a bargain guy. And at defensive end, Basham or Morgan Fox.
Damn right. Look at you, freaky Zach Vaughn, putting the work in. All right. So
I think with 1 second here. I think with a guy like Cook too, is Gabe Davis is going to be transitioning from his big slot role out to the boundary to take John Brown's role. So I think the assumption is, okay, well, Isaiah Hodgins is going to go and he's going to replace Gabe Davis in that big slot role. Well, what if, for some reason Isaiah Hodgins doesn't work out? Then you have a guy like Jared Cook who can flex out and play that big slot position that Gabe Davis played last year to start the season before John Brown went down. So Jared Cook can slot right into that role as that sort of big slot receiver, not just a tight end.
Now I'm and great points altogether. And Zach mentioned something about veteran leadership, and for some reason that is something that McDermott does like to have on his team. He doesn't like to have all young guys. He'll sprinkle in a couple young guys, but he likes his veteran guys. So I started thinking of, and the one game that stood out to me was Carlos Dunlap when we faced Seattle, and Carlos was an absolute monster. Like I know he's 32, and I know that we have some depth at DE, but it'd be nice to see if we can bring consistent pass rush. And that guy is just relentless. So Dunlap would be something nice. I know it's wishful thinking. But we're there. We're talking about these things. Number 2, I like the Patrick Peterson. Liked it a lot. I talked about it a few weeks back. A nice complementary number 2 corner that can still play. And now the guys that we thought were going to really step their game up in the pass rush can actually put something together, because now we have corners that can lock things down. So now we can actually get after the quarterback, because we had some moments where quarterbacks just had a little too much time, right? The pressure was up there, but we just couldn't finish. So we want guys that can finish, and guys like Dunlap coming in. But when a guy like Peterson comes in and locks down the corner, it gives us a little more time to finish and close the deal. And last but not least, you guys don't like this pick, but I don't give a damn. John Ross. I don't give a damn what anybody tells me. You have somebody that has speed that scares you like you wouldn't believe. You're always looking forward to it. So I remember when we were going to play the Raiders, and I remember I think Henry Ruggs was hurt that game. I don't think he played, and I was like, oh, we're going against the Raiders and Henry Ruggs. Am I reading that right? I'm trying to remember if that was the case. But teams that had speed guys, I was like, oh, I'm unsure. So when you have a guy like Ross that can still play, but mentally he just wasn't. I mean, when you play for the damn Bengals, not a whole lot of good things can happen, right? Look at AJ Green. AJ Green just become nobody because he's on the damn Bengals. So John Ross can take over the Mckenzie role, can return, can do the jet sweeps that we need. And when you have someone that just scares the hell out of you, now you have Diggs, now you have Davis, now you have Cole Beasley eating, and even then maybe you'll have Dawson Knox catch a couple meals at the same time. So to me, those are the 3 guys that I'm looking at: Ross, Peterson, and Dunlap. And that is my 3 there. So folks, to finish off and end this, because free agency is going to be crazy. We may not do a damn thing. We're talking about all these free agents, but we may not do a single thing, right? So here's hoping that we do one good splash, and then we can go into the season and then focus on draft, because draft is going to be big. So parting words. I'll start with Mitch. Mitch, are you confident that Beane is going to do the right thing, where he's going to, you know what, I trust what Beane's going to do. I'm not worried about it. Whatever he does, I'm with it. That's my guy. Process.
I am. I mean, I think one of the best things about Brandon Beane and that whole front office, right, is that they find these cheap free agents that come in and give you a ton. I mean, look at Darrell Williams. They signed him on a $2.5 million deal, and he beyond outplayed that. So when you got a salary cap that's going to be low, we already kind of know the Bills are up against it. I have faith in Beane and this front office to find these cheaper veterans that can come in and maybe give you a lot more than you thought. So I said it going into this offseason, we're going to find out what front offices kind of have it together and who doesn't, as far as finding these cheap players and getting a lot out of them. And so far, Brandon Beane up until this point has done a pretty good job with that. So yeah, my faith in Brandon Beane is 100%.
Does this one's for Clay? Clay, do you see any more cuts coming our way?
I don't see any big cuts. Probably not any big name guys getting cut. I feel like they cut the guys that they can cut. From here on out, they might restructure or try to restructure a few more guys, but I can't see any kind of like big blockbuster cuts at this point.
Perfect. Nap, do we bring back Bjorkes?
If it's for the right deal. I mean, if you can get him to sign for something that's not that $2 million restricted free agent deal, then yeah, I just don't want to have to commit that money to him right off the bat. Maybe if you wait a little bit and you don't make a move, and then you're like, yeah, you know what, we need to have our punter back, and you haven't made any sort of big moves, and you're like, the guys that you've been looking at, they're off the board already. You're not going to sign the main guys that Beane had in mind. Yeah, but that's not the first move I would like to see happen. That's something that I think you can get a serviceable punter. Obviously, having a punter who could produce like Bjorkes did last year would be awesome. Yep. But you can get another serviceable punter down the road if you absolutely have to.
Zach, can we run it back to the AFC Championship with the roster that we have right now?
As it's currently constructed, I think obviously we still got to go through the rest of the offseason, but assuming they do the draft the way we sort of expect it, free agency the way we expect it, I think you can run it back. Obviously, there is a reason why Beane is in charge and we're where we are talking about this like this. They know what they're doing. Cap Wizard is wizarding it up. Brandon Beane's taking care of business. Trust the process. They'll go as far as Allen and that team can take them.
I like it. And last but not least, Judge, team trade down or stay put?
Team trade up.
What?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. If there is a player who slips, into the early 20s that is a true game-breaking player, one of those wide receivers like Rashad Bateman or Devontae Smith is sitting there, if IOK is sitting there, if there's one of the corners slip and we can trade maybe a first and a third to move up a couple of spots or a first and a second to get into the teens, if there's a player you think can be a legit football player, trade up.
Wow, I did
with
not expect
Darrell
that.
Williams and Matt Milano intact, we can fill all the other positions straight up.
What about trading the first rounder for a player, just like a known commodity already? Like, would you be in favor of that?
I don't think there's any players out there worth it. Nor if there were, we wouldn't. I don't think we could fit that contract in. So
fair.
I'm saying like the deal's got to be right. The deal's got to be right.
Yep.
But I would move up. I don't think it's in Brandon Beane's DNA to trade down. I'm being completely honest with you. I think he has these players that he likes, and he's willing to depart with those later round draft picks to go get the players that he wants. I really do think that the Buffalo Bills really hone in on like a dozen players.
But he likes the draft picks. He likes
the draft picks, but he also likes moving around the draft board, especially up. Cody Ford, up. Tremaine Edmonds, up. Josh Allen, up. Like, he likes to move up that draft board to get the guys he wants. So if he sees a guy sticking out at the end in the 20s, I could see. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm team trade down, like personally.
Don't switch up now, boy. Don't switch up.
I'm saying if I was a GM, I'd be trading down all day because I'm absolutely in love with these second and third round draft prospects.
Right.
I don't think Brandon Beane thinks the same way. So if there's a guy out there in the late teens, early 20s sticking out of that board, trade up. Give a first and a third, give a first and a second, move up and get an absolute game-breaking talent that can come in here and day one and make an impact.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's how we're going to end this damn show. We were trying to end it off pretty chill, and then Steve comes in and drops a bombshell talking about trade up. I was like, what? Okay. So that being said, you never know. This is the thing, man. You never know with Beane, and like Steve said, man, there might be someone that is high on their draft board, and he's sitting at, I don't know, 27, 26, and he's like, screw it, I'm going for it. We'll see.
Imagine this defense with Owosu Koromoa playing like faux safety linebacker role that really like he truly is your Buffalo nickel. Like that's, the 220-pound guy who can rush off the edge, can drop back into coverage, can shut down a tight end. If IOK is standing on that board, go get him.
Go get him. Well, listen, on that note, folks, have yourself a fantastic rest of the Sunday. It's going to be a big week. Tomorrow is what we call Tampering Monday? Is that what they do it? Is that what they call it?
Tampering period.
The tampering period, where you're going to start seeing some names flying all over the place, where they could be going, where they could be potentially signing, all that good stuff. So will the Bills be active? Will they be quiet? Will they wait till, the second and third wave to really start making moves? We will soon find out when free agency starts. So that being said, gentlemen, have yourself a fantastic afternoon. It was great talking football. Always great talking football. We should do this again. And once the draft starts, man, it's going to be fire. So ladies and gentlemen, that's our time. And I guess, do we say, Steve, I'll let you take over because you normally do this whole Go Bills thing.
Yeah, we got to do the Go Bills. How are we going to do this? Like the Brady Bunch style? Do we start with Clay and work our way up to Rico? Because Rico's got the send-off. So how about we start with Clay, then Zach, then Kyle, then me, then Mitch, and then Rico will sign us out officially.
Let's go.
All right, I guess I'm starting out. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
And on that note, go Bills. And we'll see you guys very shortly. Take care, guys.